Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about digital babysitting. The most important question being, are screens replacing parenting? These are some of the very critical questions that have to be asked in this digital age. Thank you, Dr. Renner and Dr. Adu. It's a pleasure to have both of you here today discussing this very important topic.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela, for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's just dive straight into it. Dr. Renner, if you could start with you, what is digital babysitting and
Uh,
what does it mean in today's world?
So essentially, digital babysitting is when a parent or a caregiver outsources the care or the due diligence of observing the child to a third party, specifically that third party being a screen. And a screen can be a handheld screen or a screen that is mounted. It could be a television screen, it could be a screen of a tablet or of a phone. But essentially, when the parent abrogates their responsibility for watching the child to the screen.
Hmm. And why is this such a big issue in today's world?
Well, if I may start from recommendations from professional bodies like WHO and the American Academy of Pediatrics that says that below the age of 2 years, children should have zero screen time, zero,
Mm.
meaning that they should have no screen time whatsoever. Between the ages of 2 and 5, you should have a maximum of 30 minutes of screen time, 30 minutes to 1 hour. And after that, between 5 and around 12 years of age, you should have only 1 hour of screen time. And we know that as early as 6 months, children have screen in their hands for hours on end. Now, think about what this can do to a child's attention span, to their eyesight, to their sleep, activity levels. You name it, these screens are taking the attention span away from our children and the ability to concentrate and focus. And I think it's something that I think we need to address.
It actually is. I actually was very shocked when I heard those stats. Zero screen time between 0 and 2 years. I know people are giving their children phones even before they can speak, before they can do anything. In fact, even in the toy industry, they're creating these screens and they'll tell you 9 months, 12 months. Some of those screens are actually being promoted and being sold to parents in
Hmm.
different shapes and sizes. But you mentioned some very critical areas, which I'd like you to expatiate on. Because there are people out there who are listening who don't really know.
Hmm.
What does the
Okay.
screen do to sleep? What does it do to attention? Could you please explain in a bit more detail?
Okay, let me start with sleep. So the idea is that the light that is emitted from the screen is a blue light, a light with blue wavelength, meaning that when a child looks at that screen towards the evening time, when the brain is actually trying to shut down from all blue lights, it keeps the brain in a state of alertness such that the child's brain is not really telling the child that it's time to sleep. And so you find out that before they actually get to go to bed, then it becomes problematic for them to fall asleep because their brains are telling them that you should still be awake because of the blue light coming from that screen. The other part of sleep that a screen can cause is the idea that when you put a screen in a child's hand, they are sedentary and they're not moving anywhere. They're not moving around. They're not expending energy. And so you find out that at the end of the day, a child who should have run for about 3 hours and jumped on everything for about 3 hours during the day has barely expended any energy. And that energy is spent up. And so they are unable to sleep even when nighttime comes because they simply have not expended the energy that they should. When it comes to attention, what you find is that not all shows on these screens are made equally. A lot of these shows are very fast paced, they have very loud noises, bright colors, and things that are moving really quickly. And that's not how life is. Life is more desaturated than what we actually see on those screens. And so you find out that children are swiping away. And so if it's something it doesn't interest them for more, it doesn't catch their interest within 1 minute, they swipe up. And they're able to do this at will. And so when you now need to get them to sit down and listen to things that are important but not as lively or as exciting, it becomes problematic to them because they are like, this isn't what I'm accustomed to. So could you just make it a bit more exciting? And so concentration and attention actually begins to dwindle. And hyperactivity too can actually also.
What? Sorry, before you leave there, before you go on to hyperactivity, what impact does that have on school?
Sitting in class and paying attention in class and listening becomes problematic. Doing homework becomes also a bit of an issue, such that their grades begin to fall as a result of the fact that screen time is excessive because concentration in class is poor, attention is reduced, and their ability to concentrate and focus on tasks like their homework becomes impaired.
Hmm. Okay, carry on with hyperactivity.
So with hyperactivity, the idea again still boils down to the fact that screens, first of all, what they watch on screens gives them ideas on how to act, how to behave, how to speak. I always make this joke about the fact that the mother has a Nigerian accent, but the child has an American accent because he's always watching Miss Rachel or some show that's in which the characters have American accents, and I always laugh about that. But with the hyperactivity, the idea still boils down to the fact that they are not expending enough energy. And so when the screen is down, they are bouncing off the walls because they are so hyper energetic. They have not been able to exert themselves and dissipate the energy. And so 3/4 of the time, they are hyperactive because they simply have not gotten the opportunity to sit down or the opportunity to actually expend energy and even the ability to actually sit and concentrate on something other than the screen. And so once the screen is not in front of them, they are bouncing off the walls and they are everywhere. There's nothing like sit quietly.
Now, these are for the little people, because we're talking about children under 2, we're talking about children you mentioned up until the age of 5. And what you've mentioned are the main issues. Now, as they get older, what kind of impact, what more do you see?
As they get older, the problem begins to become more of a psychological challenge in the sense that what content are they consuming? Because at the end of the day, as they get older, they do get some kind of autonomy. And so they are seeing things, the content that they're consuming can dictate to them what beauty standards should be, and it begins to form their opinion on what is attractive and what isn't. There's a lot of peer pressure in terms of
Mm.
challenges. And on social media, there are all sorts of challenges where people are asked to do certain, sometimes outrageous things. And because of peer pressure, people, these children might actually be interested or might be cajoled into engaging in some of these challenges that might actually be a little bit unwholesome. Bullying as well, cyberbullying, and we do realize that it can be a problem whereby some children or some adolescents, preteens or teens might actually post online and might face a lot of backlash and bullying. And we might think that it doesn't happen here in Nigeria, but if you go online, if you go on Twitter, if you go on Instagram and see some of the most spiteful, hateful, and just completely outrageous comments that people drop under people's posts, then you realize that no one is actually immune to these things. And psychological and
Mm.
cyberbullying is almost as egregious as actual, bullying. So they do get into those sorts of things. And I don't want to just limit it to Nigeria. In some cases, some children have actually been recruited because if you look on social media, some children have actually been recruited into some sort of rings whereby predators, sexual
False.
predators, actually have access to
Oh,
them,
wow.
and that's how they meet them online. And so these dangers exist from the use of unmanaged, unmonitored, and excessive screen time and access to screens and phones.
Are those things happening in Nigeria? You hear about them abroad a lot, but here in
And
Nigeria?
well, the reality is that unfortunately we don't have the statistics. I don't imagine that they are completely absent in Nigeria. But number one, we don't have the statistics because people are not really reporting it. But I imagine that we do have some parents who are in diaspora that might listen to this, and it's something that I think they should be aware of. But maybe not so much in Nigeria, but abroad, definitely.
Mm. Now, that's really something that's really, really worrying. Now, there also is an increased incidence of suicides, depression. Can it be linked in any way to these digital babysitting
In
or digital screens?
Yes, when it comes to depression and suicide, the idea that if you've been following the news, some parents have actually sued some of the social media companies for allowing certain types of content to be viewed by their children. And some people might say that, oh, it is the responsibility of the parent to make sure that their children are not viewing things that they should not view. But at the
Can
end
you
of
give
the
us some
day,
example of this kind of content? Sorry, for the people who are
okay,
listening,
so
what are the kind
for
of content
instance,
we're talking about?
So, for instance, violent content, content that portrays violence in any way, that actually is something that a very impressionable young mind can actually take to heart. And while they might think that it has no effect on them, but at the end of the day, when they sleep, they have nightmares, they have sleep night terrors, and eventually, even when they go online and they see different sort of beauty standards presented to them, and they don't seem not to meet these beauty standards, they can develop eating disorders, they can develop certain images of their body as being inadequate or being unattractive, and that can actually lead to depression and ultimately suicide. I do remember the case of, and this is where AI comes into the situation. This young man that had started a relationship with some sort of AI bot and some sort of chat bot. And unfortunately, I think the idea was that he eventually realized that, I don't know how he didn't realize that it was a chat bot, but eventually he realized that it was a chat bot, and he got so depressed and actually committed suicide, and that
Hmm.
was particularly sad to learn about. So while these cases might seem isolated, there's nothing to suggest that they cannot reoccur or that they are not on the rise, and I think it's something that we need to safeguard against.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Adu, we haven't really heard you speak this morning. So can you tell us what makes parents do this? Why digital babysitting? Why not put more effort into, traditionally looking after your child?
Thank you very much. So parents find it very convenient, especially people who are very busy. It's just, convenient for them to put a large screen in front of the child. And these children, you observe that the moment something pops up on the screen, they go very quiet, they sit down very comfortably at that corner, and they're not disturbing their parents. So convenience is one of the leading factors. Another thing is the perceived educational value. We tend to think that when they are given this exposure, they have higher leverage educationally. So, and then because of this, everybody wants their child to have one device or the other. There is also the societal prayer that you want to outshine each other. We're not like the Joneses. We're doing so much better. People tend to, put devices that children should not even have access to in their hands. And many of these are not even monitored. So this is one big factor for these parents and their children.
Now, we're speaking about this, Dr. Renner. I don't know if you want to weigh in here. But so what do we do? Because parents, it seems to be trendy, it seems to be hip, it seems to be, justified, educationally. And yet you've
Hmm.
spoken about a whole lot of minuses. Do you want to
Okay.
add in anything here
Yeah,
to
yes, I
what she's been
absolutely do, Dr.
saying?
Pamela. Yes, I absolutely do, Dr. Pamela. So the reality is that the perceived educational value of screens does not replace human interaction. Children who have been exposed to excessive screen time actually have speech delay and delays development of communication and social skills. And this is because the only thing that educational content online can teach a child is how to repeat words. There is no two-way interaction. It is not a person interacting with another person. It is a person interacting with a screen, with the idea of another person. And so if they make mistakes in syntax, if they make mistakes in tenses, there is no one to correct them. And so a screen educational time it might teach them the words, but it doesn't really teach them how to communicate. So that is the one hand. So educational content is fine, but it doesn't replace interaction with another person, which is what is missing. The other thing, of course, is that unfortunately, I think we're beginning fall into silos, and we have become rather insular in raising families, whereby when we're growing up, we had our neighbors, we could go to our neighbor's place to go and stay until our parents came back. Now everybody is just in their own homes and in their own boxes. And so the children are not interacting with any other children when they get back from home. They are locked indoors. They're not playing outside on the streets for some safety reason or the other. And so screens are the only way in which these children can actually be kept, in check, so to say, as quietly as possible. And so I think we need to go back to that point in time where we are allowing the children to actually play, to interact with one another. I have not seen a kite fly in years. So maybe we should actually go back to flying kites.
That is something. Doctor, talking about kites flying. I mean, we don't even see people, as you said, cycling, playing football, all of the interactive things that people used to do. Now it seems to be so unsafe to have the children outside. So there's some parents, who would say, you know what, I'd rather just risk the screen time than have my
Exactly.
child out there. But how do you balance it? How do we achieve balance this? So, Dr. Adu, your thoughts?
Yeah, it is very important that we find a good balance between the screen time and this social interaction. A lot of advantages of social interaction has been outlined by Dr. Renner, and we must prioritize all this. These children, they tend to be so withdrawn, self-centered, they're not street smart. So we must know that it is not all beneficial for them to just be exposed to a gadget or to the screen. So balance now. We ensure that within the confines of our community, no matter how small, maybe within the estates where we stay or within our compound, we allow the children to play outside. Even if they are just going to play with one or two neighbors, then we can gradually scale that. We can enroll them in sports clubs, in book clubs, literary societies, swimming classes, and educational things outside the home that does not involve the use of devices, where they can actually build their communication skills, social interaction, build their self-esteem, ability to assert themselves. All these things seems to be lacking in children of today. Many of our children today are not street smart because they've not been exposed at all. They're only at home. And the reality that they are watching on those programs, they actually don't exist in real world. So they need to come out and then interact with other children, know how to negotiate, know how to find balance, how to find their ways. In fact, most of our children cannot go to school by themselves, because of all these our society. So we need to build those skills in them, ability to stand on their legs and to be assertive and not just glued to screen. So these are some of the ways that will help us, even in training of these children.
Thank
Can
you,
I just
Dr.
chip
Renner.
in?
Any thoughts? Yeah, please do.
Yes, I think to some degree, the screen habits of children mirror the screen habits of parents, such that we are always on our phones. So, guilty as charged, we are always on our phones, looking through something, looking at Instagram. I remember waiting in a lobby years and years ago where there was no television and there was no screen. You'd carry a book, you'd carry a novel to read. There would be magazines in the waiting area. But now our children want our attention and we are on the phone screen. And the idea is that children are going to wonder what is so important about that screen that you simply cannot pay attention to me, in their primordial brains. And so they want that thing that is in your hand that you pay so much attention to. And so I think that to some degree, the screen habits of children reflect the screen habits of parents. And so I think as parents, we also need to, balance how much screen time we have. We might assume and say that, oh, well, I'm working on my phone. 3/4 of the time, we are not working on our phones. We're looking for what is happening on Instagram, what is happening in the news.
That's
so
true.
maybe we should take the speck out of our eyes before we look for the log
The
out
log.
of our eyes before we look for the
Yeah, the modeling for the children is so important at this time. And I think that there's just so much that the screens do. I mean, we already have the issue that the parents are not there most of the time, that they're there with the house helps are the ones taking care of the children. Then the house helps, because even if a parent wants to reduce screen time and they're not there, how does it happen? I mean, what can they do?
Yeah, many of these devices can actually be timed. they can be timed in such a way that while we don't totally want to leave these children without access and exposure to the general world, the bigger world, we time what they are watching. Then we censor the content of their screen time too. And then we can also watch with them. When parents are there, you watch with them so that they know that this site, they are no-go area. They are not good for me. At this time, I cannot go there. Then together we can emphasize the lessons of the program or the whatever we are watching together and say, okay, do you see what happened to this child? You see what happened to this child? So we use such time to not only as bonding time, but to also ingrain values, particularly values that relate to our families and what we stand for in them. And we can also guide their caregivers that will be there when we are not there and tell the caregivers that these leave standing rules. You cannot go here, you cannot go there. We can block some sites, on our devices, and then we can restrict access to the internet within the homes.
That's important. So unfortunately, this program has rushed to an end. Can you give us any last words, any perhaps words of advice to parents, Dr. Adu?
Yes, my advice to parents is we must allow our children to benefit from technology, but we must not lose sight of our primary assignment to train them. So we must make sure that while we give them access to devices and the internet, we guide them, we provide guidance, we limit the excesses, and we are there to actually model good behavior in them.
Thank you. Dr. Renner, any last words for our listeners?
Yes, just to reiterate, screens are not babysitters. They do not replace you. And so, parents, you are doing your best, we know, but please, please, please have a structure that allows screens to be offered to children at very specific times so that nobody has any expectations that screens will be offered to them outside that window. Form a structure and get creative about finding alternatives to screens like reading, play, and creative scenarios.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's actually excellent. And I think at this point, I'd also want to remind people that the Dawn Project competition is still on. Children of all ages from age 7 can participate and win grand prizes. Let them use their creativity and join. So go on now to www.dawnproject.org and enroll your child, your pupil, your grandchild, and just let them engage, let them do competitions, let them just use the natural skills that God has given them. And let's all, I think, work towards building a better and safer structure for them. Thank you so much, Dr. Renner. Thank you so much, Dr. Adu. Really appreciate your coming on this program and talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for new video updates.